Welcome to the Inside Scoop, your one-stop shop for cracking the leadership code. Have you ever wondered what those conversations are like in the boardroom? Curious about the secret sauce successful executives possess? On the Inside Scoop podcast, we sit down with successful executives, getting their unique perspective on what it takes to be a good leader. They'll share their hard-won wisdom, the crucial competencies needed to thrive as a leader, and the unexpected lessons learned along the way. Here, we unlock the secrets of the executive suite. We get the inside track directly from the leaders themselves. In each episode, we'll dissect the essential skills needed to go from manager to leader, offering a leader's perspective on the challenges, triumphs, and unexpected wisdom they've acquired. The Inside Scoop, leadership lessons, served fresh.
I'm glad to have you join us today for another episode of the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Eduardo Bryant, and today we've got an exciting show for you. I think you're going to really like this one because we're going to be introducing some concepts that we think that as a leader in management, you're going to want to pay attention to some of this. Now, our guest, her name is Sheryl Whitaker. She is the former Assistant Vice President of Learning for USAA. That sounds real impressive. When you meet her, it's even more impressive. This podcast, it's available wherever you get your podcasts. And if you hear something that you like, we encourage you to subscribe and to become part of our viewing audience. So without any further ado, let's welcome our guest in. Sheryl, welcome to the show.
Hi, Eduardo. Thank you for having me. Really super excited to be here today.
You know, the excitement is really on my end because I've been looking forward to this interview for a while now. So I'm excited about it. But, you know, before we begin, I always like to know what my guests are reading. As an executive like yourself, certainly you're doing things to keep yourself on top of your game and to remain sharp. I always like to know, what are you reading right now?
Oh boy, I'm reading a whole bunch of different things. I love to read. So my Kindle is loaded. But from a business perspective, right now I'm reading Irresistible Leadership by the great Josh Bersin.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Good. Good. I
Yes.
haven't read that one, so I'll have to make a
Oh,
note.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan. He really, knows his stuff when it comes to the leadership space. And I think no matter how long you've been in this game, there's always something that you can learn. And so I just cracked that book open not too long ago.
All right. I like that statement. No matter how long you play in this game, there's always something you can learn.
Always something. If you think you know it all, then you're already behind.
Touche. Good point. I like that. Well, as we get started here, I'm sure your journey and your path to being at a VP level, which again, congratulations, it's not easy to certainly get there. And I appreciate you just spending some time with us. You know, as I tell my guests all the time, it's not easy to get an audience with the executive leadership team. I mean, you guys are tough to get a hold of. You know, we'll go to meetings and we'll see you and we'll want to stand around and maybe hobnob for just a few minutes, but it's just not easy to have this kind of an audience. So I appreciate being able to bring you on board. So as you think about your career path and how you got to where you are, not to mention all the things that you have done, I'd like for you to take a moment and share the story of how Sheryl Whitaker got to where she is today.
Wow. Well, it's really interesting because in my space, in the talent space, it's a thing now. You know, back in the day, we used to talk about career paths and how one step would lead to the other as a straight ladder going up, right? Now we understand that it really isn't a ladder, it's a lattice. So you're moving from here to there, from side to side, getting where you want to go. And that's really been what my entire career has been like. I am not saying that I'm not a goal-oriented person. I am. But my goal is really to always be learning and growing. And so throughout, my career, my focus has always been on what can I do in order to continue the growth and continue to increase my influence and my ability to learn while I'm here on this planet. So I am a highly creative person. I love when things are different. I love change. When I was that kid back in school who, when a new kid was coming into the classroom, I would always be excited to meet that person and bring them in under the fold and make sure that they were okay. And so I found that as I was growing up and through high school, and then into college, and then my first role outside of college, that I've always looking for ways to bring folks along, and just a natural leader. Because I'm creative, my first love truly was art. I took a lot of art classes in junior high through high school, and it's interesting because people think art classes are easy, and they are not. I remember my favorite teacher, Mr. Cantoni, and he was so tough, Eduardo. He was really, really tough, and people would come into the class, just to kind of like think it was going to be an easy class, and he got a reputation quickly for, don't go in Mr. Cantoni's class unless you want to do some hard work. And I really did think that, graduating from high school, I was going to go into something to do with the arts. And I'm from Trinidad. My parents are from Trinidad and Tobago. I was born in Brooklyn. So growing up in a Caribbean household, my mom was an executive for United Nations in HR. My dad, a really successful life insurance agent. They said, all right, the art thing is great, but we also want you to be able to have that business side. So went to Penn State, got a degree in marketing. And then afterwards, this is, well, I'm going back into like the late 80s. I thought I was going to come out and end up working for an advertising agency, but you couldn't work for advertising unless you knew how to type. And I mean, and it's hard to think about, I'm dating myself a bit, but now we all type so much, it's hard to think about coming out of college and just being like, you're not really a great typer. It wasn't that much of a thing. And so I ended up taking a job at State Farm Insurance as a claims adjuster because I didn't have to take a typing test. And I thought to myself, well, I'll just do this until, I get my real job. But I didn't know then, and it's something I know now, my whole career has been in insurance and financial services. There's a wealth of opportunity and variety and experiences within any institution, but especially for me personally, in insurance. So I went, up this path of, claim representative, and then I was in leadership as a supervisor, and then I moved on to, senior leadership. And along the way, I had an opportunity to get involved with some training on the technical side. And Eduardo, I just fell in love. I completely fell in love, so much so that when an opportunity came for me to change paths, okay, not the ladder, but the lattice, I had an opportunity to interview for a role in learning and development in HR that was going to take me two steps back. It would have been a demotion for me if I got that job. So some folks looked at me like I was crazy. Like, why would you do that? I was, getting increasing amount of responsibility, well respected, that whole thing. And I had a great leader. Her name is Nancy Tully, who was real supportive. And she said, if this is what you want to do, Sheryl, I'm going to support you 100% of the way. And so I was able to prepare for that interview. She gave me her office to prepare. I had to do a presentation, all that kind of stuff. And I ended up getting the job. And I took it. And like I said, some people thought I was crazy, but I never looked back. And I was able to, really feed that desire to watch the lights go off, in a great way when folks are, you know, learning and growing and sharing. And I had an amazing time. I was at State Farm for 17 years. 17 years. Learning and development. I got into communications. Like, again, any opportunity I had in order to, take like my backpack of skills and the things that I love to do, I would always take that opportunity as long as people were involved, because at the end of the day, that's always been my biggest love, working with and helping people. So that was awesome. 17 years at State Farm, I left and went to a smaller insurance organization. I thought I was going there to do more on the organizational development side, but because I had so much business experience, they ended up making a change. They were doing some transformation type of work. And they said, hey, we know that you're doing this learning thing, but can you also run this part of the business? And I said, okay, so I was a senior director over no fault litigation in New York. I did that for 6 years. That fed my need to help um folks learn and grow. I love transforming things. I love fixing things. The department was in a mess. And so I was able to do that, but I really, at the end of the day, truly missed the learning and talent side of the business and HR. And so once that organization was sold, I went off to AIG, and at AIG I spent 8 years in the town space. So I'm breathing and I'm thinking I'm still not done with my story yet though. Eduardo, I'll keep going if you're good.
No, we are good. I'm sitting here with bated breath,
Oh
just
my goodness.
listening and taking it all in. And I've got all these.
Oh, okay. I'm like, oh God, it's like, oh, I haven't run down this whole, like the whole story in a really long time. So I appreciate the opportunity to do so. Um, so I was at AIG for 8 years. In the talent space. Started out on the claims, technical side training, moved over to the enterprise side, got involved with the design and development aspects of the learning and development space. Ran an amazing team, got to work with some incredible talented professionals and leaders, and made a real difference in that organization, and I was happy there. And then 4 years ago, USA reached out to me about now my former role, and I was really comfortable where I was. I had a great team. We were doing amazing stuff, really doing some things to change the face of learning in an organization like AIG, which is massive. And I had to ask myself, like, what would you do? It's cliche, but what would you do if you weren't afraid? And said, well, if I wasn't afraid, I would I would take this opportunity and a leap of faith, um, and start something new, because every opportunity that I've had so far in my career, I will come in and take over a team or take over a department. Things were already built, and I was charged with making it better. When USA reached out to me about the role, it was about building something from scratch, right? It had never been done in this particular part of the business. And I had an opportunity, this is right before the pandemic, I had an opportunity to build my team, work remotely, build my team from wherever they were in the United States. So I wasn't confined by location, so I can get the best of the best. And that's what I did. And fortunately, I was able to make a really great difference for that organization, creating a learning strategy and then watching that come to pass over the last 4 years. In addition to that, they gave me more responsibilities. So in addition to the property and casualty team that I built, I was responsible for enterprise learning, responsible for DEI learning, um, learning governments, and then finally the transformation of learning as that organization continues to evolve. So it has been and continues to be, for me, a really cool and fun journey in a space that I love so much.
Fascinating story there. I like the part when you talked about it's not a ladder, it's a lattice.
Yes, it is.
I think most people have some type of lattice. track record in their life and on their way to whatever career they're developing and building there. But I want to go back for a moment to
Sure.
your days in college where you
Hmm.
were taking these art classes. Because when
Yes.
you said that, it resonated with me because I've had some of those art classes. And
Oh,
so,
yeah? Nice.
yeah, and they are not easy.
No, they're not easy.
They
They're
are
not
not.
easy.
But in addition to them just being art class, share a little bit about how those classes kind of set you, if they did, kind of assuming that they did,
Okay.
set you on the path of your, the way you thought, the way you process information, your ability to be a visionary, because when you're doing art, you're trying to create something, much like you do when you're running a learning and development team. You've got to create. And with some companies, they bring you in and the department's a mess, and all of a sudden, you got to create that. So let's
Yeah.
make a bridge that art into how you were able to do some of the things that you were able to do in your career from when you started with all the skill sets that was being developed from the art.
So, Eduardo, you are absolutely brilliant because no one has ever asked me that question before, right? The ability to see like the connection between my art experience and work. And I'll say I have not given it much thought, but giving it some thought now, it's interesting because you're right. Like what's coming to my mind right now is a painting that I did one time just on campus at Penn State. And we were asked to paint this, like, go out there with your brushes and your paint and paint what you see. And I picked this building that was on campus. And I love watercolors, by the way. So watercolor it's a lot of people don't like it. They say it's the toughest medium to work with because it's like oil. You can make a mistake and you can just take some turpentine and you can wipe it out and start over again. Watercolor, it sets. But what I love about it is that it's not so exact, right? So it's fluid and you can push it around and you can make it something that it hasn't been before. And no two watercolors, even if I'm the same person painting it, no two will be the same. And so from a business perspective, it was a similar kind of thing where when I was asked to create, even when it's just a transformation or to create from scratch, there are some things that are laid out for you, but I was given the brush. And what I love is when I'm able to, there's some confines, like, so going back to that building, I was painting the building. So there's some things that are there, the confines of culture and policies and things of that nature in business. But I still was given a brush in order to paint what I could see. And when you're painting, you're looking at something and you're thinking like, but I don't want to paint exactly what I'm looking at. I'm painting it through my eyes, through my vision of what it should be. And when you are an artist, you have to be able to do that. And you have to be able to just be when you're sitting there with a blank piece of paper, a brush and some paint, when you have the paintbrush and when you are an artist, you have to be able to envision with that blank piece of paper what it is exactly that you're going to do. And so it's just this is such a cool conversation because until you asked me that question, I never thought about the connection between my art, um how the two are connected. And the my love of art gives me an opportunity to express myself in different ways. And I have found different ways to express myself and the imagination of those who are my team, those who are in my care in the same way. The creativity that comes with the marketing and branding aspects of the work that we do, which is something that is far too often ignored. When you're trying to get a whole enterprise to learn, People learn because they want to, they learn because they have to. But you have to make it interesting and exciting and creative and innovative, and different in order to capture the hearts and minds of those who are participating in whatever that learning experience or talent experience might be. So,
Those are great points. And I think a lot of times in leadership, we forget that when you're in leadership, the competencies that are needed to lead other people, it's vastly different than the people who are doing the jobs for the positions with which we're leading.
yes,
And I think we have to understand that as leaders, something triggered us. In your case, I heard in your story that it was the art that kind of got you started, because knowing all about art as you do, certainly there are modalities within that that direct a person. It gives you vision, it gives you opportunity, it gives you creativity. And we often
yes,
say, I'm a creative person, but where did that come from? In your case, it's from you looking at a building, but saying, I'm not just going to paint it just like the building. I'm going to bring Cheryl's imagination into it and create my own. And now
yes,
you get to be in leadership and you say, this is my department. They've given it to me. What am I going to do? How do I improve it, make it better? How do I change it? How do I rearrange things? How do I give the experience to the people under my care the best experience of their life? That's vision. So when we talk
yes.
about competencies and being a visionary, this is what we are talking about. And it sounds like you developed that vision and then you built upon it from one company to the next, from one position to the next, all
Yeah.
the way up.
Can I say one thing, Eduardo?
Of
There's one piece that's really important in all this, and it goes for art and it goes for leadership too. You have to have this ability to like you can be afraid, but do it anyway. Right? So, like I mentioned to you before, like depending upon the medium that you're using in art, you can easily, wipe away. So some people are, not afraid to make mistakes, but you have to be okay with mistakes. You have to be okay with trying out something new, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. You've got to be okay with, trying something and then crumpling it up, what they say, you fail fast. Okay, this is not working. Crumble that up and try again. I know as a leader, I always try to create that safe space for my team to be able to, in addition to speaking up and challenging and questioning and all those kind of things that make us all better. But I wanted to create a space where folks can really like express themselves creatively, and that only happens when you feel secure enough to make mistakes. It's really important.
being secure enough to make mistakes. I like what you said, afraid, but do it anyway.
Yep.
That's that is great. And I think a lot of us in leadership, we are afraid, and so we don't do anything. We simply don't even try it. And I
Yeah, which is the worst. You're not going to get there if you don't
it is.
try. Yeah, you
It
got to try.
is. Hey, one of the quotes I love is you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Just said that earlier to somebody today in a conversation. It's true. If you don't give it a shot, you're
It,
out of the water, right? It's not going to
you
happen.
are you
Gotta
are
try.
absolutely right on that. And so, you talk about how you've had one position and then you got stepped into another position. Share a little bit about what you think are some of those competencies, those skills that you had that other people saw in you. They recognized it to say, you know what? I think Cheryl can take over this department, or I think Cheryl would be a great addition to our team. What do you think were some of those things that you brought to the table that people said, yeah, this can be a benefit for us?
First word that comes to mind is energy.
Mm,
And it's positive energy. And there are some folks who might think, well, if you're a positive person, if you are a happy person, that you cannot possibly be a tough person, right? Because as a leader, you have to make decisions, and sometimes those decisions are not easy. I've had to make a lot of tough decisions in my 20 plus year career. especially on the leadership side, right? Folks who have, had to reduce staff or had to make, significant changes to how we work something. But it just comes down to that ability, that energy and the love of people, understanding, at the end of the day, that humans are at the heart of everything that we do. So if you truly understand, you know, that at the end of the day, the folks who are in your care, the folks who are in my care, are at first human beings, everything else is possible. Understanding what motivates individuals, what makes them tick, caring about them as people first, knowing that work gets done through them as people. These are the competencies that I don't know if they consider them competencies or not, but they're just aspects of my personality, who I am as a person. That I'm fortunate enough, other people, other leaders, sponsors, have seen in me. I had one leader one time who said to me, "Oh, Sheryl, I love leadership. It's just if I just didn't have to deal with the people, I would love leadership." And I had to laugh because I'm like, okay, but you are leading people. So this individual was so happy that I was there to take care of like the people aspect so they can deal with the leadership, but it's all one and the same. And so those leaders in my career who, also my business acumen, I like to think I'm a super smart person and like I can see the forest for the trees. I understand, what we're trying to do, where we're trying to go to, how to get there. But the most important thing is my energy and my love for people and keeping things positive along the way as best I can has helped me.
A positive outlook, a positive mental attitude, they say will carry you very far. In listening to you say that, I was thinking about there are those who believe that management through the power of fear is an effective method to get people to
I've
do
been
things.
there too.
Yeah, and for those who think that this is how, I want to keep all the employees just a little on the edge, just a little bit afraid so that they work harder. It's almost like cracking the whip. And that type of leadership, I personally don't think survives and does
No,
well. And I think that's where people end up quitting good jobs because you know as well as I do that the number one reason why a person quits a job is because
manager,
it's their manager. And I
their
think
manager. Yeah, I mean, we spend so much time at work, right? So if your manager is mean, let's just say, I'll cut to the chase, um, that is coloring, that is a gray cloud, across the majority of your days while you're working. And folks, I've been in that, that spot myself where it's like, wow, I can't stay here. I can't, it's not healthy. You get anxiety, and then you don't do, here's the thing, then those individuals are not doing their best work because they're not in an environment that where they can thrive and bloom and blossom, because it's raining pouring hard every single day, and that is, you're not getting the best out of anyone in that kind of situation. It's sad.
let me get your thoughts around this.
Yeah.
How would a senior leader, such as yourself, being at a VP level and even higher than that, how would a executive spot, recognize, notice that a manager is exhibiting, let's call it bad management habits, or perhaps they're just being mean or things? It's one thing to be the employee on the receiving end of that, and I think that we
Hmm.
can all raise our hand and say we've all been there.
Yes.
But
Hmm.
as that person's manager, how would you think that a senior manager would even notice that maybe their manager who is managing people is just not up to par, just not doing it outside of the numbers? I think we
Yep.
use the benchmark the numbers. I think it's
Yeah, and
easy.
results.
Yeah, it's easy to say Bob is at the bottom, in terms of his district or his region. And then that becomes a telltale sign. But what about when Bob is not at the bottom? He's in the middle toward the top. How do we recognize that so that we can help?
I would spend time with the folks that were, within my vertical, and again, not just with my directors. So in answer to your question, as a senior leader, you have to move beyond what we call your first team. You have to move beyond that team and spend time with those who are completely all within your care, throughout your department. Have conversations and build bridges so that if there's something that's going wrong, you'll be able to, hopefully you'll be able to either sniff it out, or you are building those relationships where someone will come to you and say like, hey, something here is not going well. Also, you need to take the time and have intentional conversations, because people will assume that you don't have the time. So having skip levels and things of that nature also makes it easier for you to build those relationships and figure out what's good.
You said a word, so I'm going to piggyback off of what you said as well. And that is, you said be intentional. And I think that's the
Yes.
key. I think it's key because as a senior manager, you've got to be intentional to be protecting everybody within your vertical and understand that if you're a leader of leaders, the leader is that's in the middle. That person is going to manage up as well
Yes.
as manage down.
You all do.
Hmm.
Yes.
And so as an executive, you might not see what the people below that person is actually doing. So you don't catch it. You don't pick up on it. So I think to your word, being intentional means you don't just look for how are the numbers. They give you your spreadsheet, and you look at the numbers, and then you make evaluations off of that. I think you got to go much deeper. And I think
Yeah.
that's where you got to really be intentional on wanting to know what is this person like and how is the organization's going. And so I think to your point, that's really good to be able to focus on, I'm not just going to look at numbers, but I'm going to look at behavior patterns. And that comes into EQ. You talk about the one manager that said leadership would be awesome. It'd be great if I didn't have to lead people. Well, then you're going to be missing it.
Crazy, right?
It's crazy. So I think that's where EQ is important. And so I recommend to all senior leaders, be on top of your EQ game and
Yes.
look forward in your people.
Yes, that self-awareness it's critical, because if you don't, you are rowing a boat and there are several holes that are being drilled in that boat. You need to make sure you're on top of your game, and then everyone else is as well. And again, that takes time, but at the end of the day, still you're talking about people, right? And the human experience at work.
And I think you have to keep that aspect at front of mind at all times. Is that if you are a project manager and you are obviously managing a project, then that's a little bit different. Even though you have people on your team, you still have to
Mhm.
obviously have a relationship with them. But when you're a people manager, it takes a whole different aspect to be able to understand that I've got people's lives in my hand. I've got the
Yes.
emotional austerity. I mean, yeah, we're all responsible for ourselves. Don't get me wrong. I get that part. But there's a level when you spend 8+ hours a day with someone, you can affect their mental acuity, how they respond, what they do, how they act. That can come from a good day as well as a bad day at the office. And you don't want to be the cause of a bad day.
Because bad days over time lead to either bad results or no results at all. I would go as much to say that if you do not, not everyone loves people, which is so funny, right? Because we're all people. But there are people who are people lovers and there are people who are not. But if you are someone who really would rather not deal with people, it's gonna be your life in leadership is gonna be it's gonna be harder. It's gonna be harder because there's an expectation there that when you're leading, people are following you. And if you're just a positional leader, you'll never see the results that you could if you bring everyone along with you, and you're riding that ride together, you're rowing that boat together, not on the
So
backs of others.
you ask yourself, how would a person who doesn't really like working with people end up in leadership? How does a person like that actually make it into leadership? I know where I point the finger. I'm not sure where you would point the finger on that situation. I'll share where I point the finger. I look at the
Yeah,
manager.
where do you point the finger? I'm curious.
Yes,
Yeah.
I point the finger on the manager that's above them. So, okay, here's an example. Let's say you got Sierra. Sierra is not really a people person. Everybody knows Sierra is not really a people person, but Sierra is phenomenal at her job. I mean, a company person, willing to do anything, just hard worker, dedicated, good employee, just not a real strong people person. A promotion comes up. Her boss figures the person that needs to be in this position needs to have all the skill sets that Sierra has. So at that moment, you got to make a decision. That manager asks Sierra to take the position because the manager knows that in this position, these are the skills that I need. So Sierra gets into that position. Now, Sierra, again, is not a manager, is not a people person, but they're going to give her an extra week of vacation because it's a promotion. She's going to get a lot more money because it's a promotion. She's going to have an office now instead of a cubicle because it's a promotion. She might even get a little bit more stock options because she's at a different level. And she's going to have a level of authority she did not have. That fivefold thing right there is going to cause Sierra to go, yes, I'll
Yes.
take the position. Now, the people up underneath her are going, no,
Oh no.
no. Yeah. It's like that commercial, Calgon, take me away.
Taking it away.
So is that Sierra's fault? No, it's not Sierra's fault. You know whose fault that is? The manager
The person who hired her, the person who
that
promoted
hired her. That person needs to understand that the competencies, the skills needed is not just somebody that can do what Sierra did, but it's at a different level. And right up there toward the top is being able to deal with people. So that's where I think
Yes.
I'm
Yeah,
curious
no,
to hear your
I
thoughts.
completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. And we talk a lot about, when it's performance evaluation time, there's the what, but there's also the how, right? So what did you get done, but how did you get done? And a lot of times the how have to do with people, critical, um, strategic thinking, influence, communication, right? I mean, it's ha courage, leadership courage, all those things there, it's about the person, the people who are in your care. And so if I was the hiring manager and I'm looking at Sierra, I could look and say like, wow, she the what? All these things are awesome, right? But then I have to think about how is she going to work with everybody else because she's not a people person. How is she going to get work done through others? And if I can't see that individual, Sierra, making that connection, making that leap, and if I'm not willing to help her along the way, because a lot of hiring managers is kind of like, all right, go in and here it is, here's your desk, go do it. You know what to do. If I'm not going to help them along the way, then sadly Sierra's probably going to fail and the team is going to fail as well, which means I'm failing.
I
So
think you just helped a lot of people right there. Think that that was spot on with that. So, this has been great. And I'm sure that the managers who are in management listening to this have really gotten some good pearls of wisdom and some takeaway points there. And certainly
good.
the employees, yeah, that are below them are thinking, yes, this has been great because, the topics are not common household topics that we've discussed. It's peeling back the onion. It's going behind the veil and being able to look at some of those things. It's just not like do this and do that. It's really understanding that Sierra shouldn't have been in that spot. That's not Sierra's fault.
Not
That's the
Sierra's fault.
manager's fault. So
Yep.
they got to understand that and be able to know that. So, you know what? This has been great. I really enjoyed this. I've appreciated your time. Maybe there were some thoughts and things that you wanted to say that you forgot to say or didn't have an opportunity to say. I'd like to give you a moment to kind of go back and reflect and offer any other pearls of wisdom that you'd like to give for the listening audience. I'll give you that a space right now. Sheryl, the floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Eduardo. I really, really appreciated this conversation so much. It's not often that we get a chance to sit down and talk about, your story and how you got here and leadership. And the one thing I will say, at the end of the day, my last pearl of wisdom, and it's not rocket science, but leading, in my perspective, from my perspective, leading is a privilege and leading is a responsibility. And when you were making a decision to go from being an individual contributor to leadership, or if you're moving into various levels of responsibility where it seems at the end of the day that you're moving further and further away from the people, my word of advice is to remember that it's always about people, even in this age of AI. It at the end of the day, it's still about the people. And so everything that you can do, this is what I'm doing, everything that I can do to read up, to continue to hone my craft from a leadership perspective, I'm making sure that I do. And then I hope that for all the leaders who are out there listening, that you do the same, understanding what an honor and a privilege it is to have other people in your care in the workplace.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying all that, and of course, sharing all that wisdom with the listening audience and your personal story. So thank you for that, and thank you all for taking time out of your day to either watch or listen to this podcast. We appreciate having you as always. And again, if something kind of resonated with you, we encourage you to subscribe and become part of our viewing audience. Well, until we have another time to get together, we appreciate you listening or watching this episode of The Inside Scoop. Bye for now.
For more exclusive leadership insights, be sure to subscribe to The Inside Scoop on YouTube and Spotify. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that share button and spread the word. See you next time on The Inside Scoop.